and welcome everybody. Welcome attendees, and very nice to have you here today for the first edition of the DASA ELF conversation addressing the talent squeeze strategically. And as the pace of digital transformation accelerates, it's become increasingly important for organizations to acquire, manage, and retain IT talent so that they can deliver technology and powered business solutions at the pace which their customers and markets demand. And we're going to be hearing from 3 thought leaders today, which I'm going to introduce to you in a minute. I'm just going to go through the agenda, some housekeeping, and also talk. Helen's going to talk a little bit about DASA and its offerings. So first off, the agenda today is the introduction to DASA, ELF, and then Helen Parker will introduce about the membership community and talent academy. And then I will then introduce the speakers and hand over to Sebastian to facilitate today's conversation and interactive discussion. And then we will wrap up, and there will be a poll at the end. And also, I will also explain some topics for future events for you to join. Next slide, Coco, please. So if I can just ask everybody, just a bit of housekeeping, to keep your microphone on mute. But if you would like to speak and contribute during the webinar, please raise your hand, announce your name and company, because it would be good to know who you are, or write in the messaging if you don't want to speak, and we will read out your comments, because this is an interactive discussion and your opinions do matter. And as I mentioned before, there will be a poll at the end when we close the discussion, and it's very important to have your feedback for future conversations and topics. And also, if you would like to contribute as a speaker, we would love to hear from you. Next slide, Coco. So I'm going to hand over to Helen at this stage, who's going to talk a little bit about DASA and its offerings, and then we will then go to the main topic for today. Helen,
thanks for that, Katrina, and welcome everyone. So over the past couple of months, since I've sort of come on board with DASA as the Director of Membership, I've been speaking to various leaders, CIOs and CTOs and CHROs, on what the biggest obstacles are that may prevent them from reaching their strategic goals in the coming, let's say, 12 to 24 months, especially as IT has become so very central during the past 2 years. So each time it's the same tune. It's talent acquisition challenges. So it seems to be the common theme. And this is quickly followed by the question, do you know how other companies are dealing with this? So this is obviously a global issue where the crippling workforce shortages in tech sector and difficulties in accessing the right talent are actually some of the biggest and most immediate worries for organizations. And this may persist for another 3 to 5 years. So organizations are leaving no stones unturned. They're spending huge budgets in their endeavors to attract the right talent, and furthermore on training and engagement to retain them. Do you invest more in inexperienced or less skilled staff and spend more on training? How do you ensure that you create the right learning culture to equip your staff with a continuous learning platform to help them evolve their skills? How do you create a healthy knowledge sharing culture? How do you create employee engagement leading to a high motivation and performance? And how do you incentivize, how do you recognize and reward staff that are committed? And how do you enhance your employer brand to stand out from the rest? So there's a lot of things happening. So the wonderful part about the industry bodies, and if you could just quickly go to the next slide, Coco, and the community platforms such as DASA is that it offers the guidance and advice based on co-creation and shared experiences. So several organisations and their leaders have faced these issues before and other challenges in their transformations and have come up with effective approaches and solutions. So what are they? So we invite you to join the ELF community to discuss these complex but relevant topics. And besides the monthly ELF events, similar to the one today, we also tap into the collective intelligence and experiences of other leaders around the globe. We exchange ideas and practical guidance. So we invite you to also utilise the various resources such as the recordings, the white papers, the publications on our website and the member section as well. And if you have any questions at all on how to be involved with the DASA membership, the community or anything else, do not hesitate to ask. So I won't take up anyone's time any further, and Katrina, I hand it back to you.
Thank you very much, Helen. And please, we will obviously give you Helen's email at the end if you would like to inquire about membership at the end. And now I'm going to welcome our speakers for today. First up, we have Erin Mulholland, who is Senior Learning Manager, Risk and Regulatory Training at Charles Schwab, who has many years of experience as a learning strategist, performance consultant, thought leader, inspiring change and career transformation. So welcome, Erin, today. Great to have you here. And
thank you.
yeah, and I know you're going to contribute to this conversation with lots of useful facts. So it's great to have you. And then we have Renee, who is joining us, who's Agile Transformation Lead at Alliance Technology and is CIO, CTO, and a strong background in change management and transformation, and proven in Agile and DevOps at scale, senior change and IT leader, and has significant experience in digital transformation. So welcome, Renee, today. And Sebastian. Thank you, Renee. And Sebastian Lorichet, who is, again, helping us build this Enterprise Leadership Forum and is very much part of the DASA community. He is strategic advisor in digital transformation, mergers and acquisitions, with more than 15 years experience working for high-tech companies, building digital products, and now currently is head of manufacturing industry EMEA at ServiceNow. So Sebastian, over to you to lead this discussion.
Thanks. So don't expect that we have many more slides to present, because we are aiming to make it as much as possible interactive. Last time we used Zoom, so again, we are learning while we are trying to grow our community. So we have Coco and Katrina who are able to see if you're raising your hand by using the GoToWebinar control panel, or you have potentially the chat available where we as panelists could see your questions and incorporate those in our answers. When we were looking into how can we work and how can we support our community the best, the community came back with questions around, listen, we are having challenges to deal with talent. How do we attract talent? How do we retain talent? How do we develop talent? And therefore, I'm really proud that we have Erin Mulholland, who's really experienced in developing your talent in a company. And then we have also Renee, who's really experienced on how to build the, let's call the new ecosystem where your talent is your human capital to fuse your transformation at Alliance Technologies. What I would like to do, again, is to frame the discussion. And I'm not again telling that the last 24 months were really disruptive for our economy, our supply chain into talent. But if I'm looking to the temperature of the industry, I believe that it's really currently, we have the big evacuation. Talent is moving from one organization to the other. And we have a few roles and responsibilities, skills that are becoming scarce. Is it about software developers? Sure it is. Is it about data scientists or anything related in the field of artificial intelligence and data? Yeah, we see there a huge challenge on attracting, retaining, and developing the right talent. Today we try to bring in different perspectives, but also we don't have all answers. clearly in the preparations, also working with Aaron, we have seen that we don't have all answers. But we would like to see jointly if we can co-create on a potential direction of where DASA can contribute into white papers, best practices, or trainings, or events where we can work upon to see what are the best practices in the industry on developing the talent required to succeed in the mission. And the mission is changing from being only a profit to it being sustainable, being a company that focuses on his, let's call it, impact on society, focusing on ESG. So it's really changing. What I want to do, I want to invite Erin as the first one to share her take on what's ongoing in the world of talent and how to deal with it from her perspective. And she's really experienced in learning and development. Erin, over to you.
Thank you, Sebastian. You know, my first thought on the talent development squeeze that we're encountering is to really take a step back and look at learning and development, because it is so foundational to the success of new hires, and even in the strategic planning of, you know, retention of employees that you already have in your company that you want to you know, grow professionally for succession planning purposes. And you know, one of the big red flags that I've seen, and that, you know, when I'm speaking with my colleagues here in the US, is that the learning and development is, because it is a not a it's not a revenue center. So it is one of the very first spaces, you know, in the corporate sphere where the budget is completely inadequate, sliced and diced. And ordinarily, when there's any kind of a you know, reorganization or a tightening of the belts, learning and development are the first group shown the door. So that has a huge impact on, you know, what we're dealing with now. I'm seeing that corporations are, you know, very underfunded in the learning and development space. They see that they really need to step up their pace, adding additional training, you know, for like leadership, and, you know, it's expensive. Even having proper onboarding plans. Can't tell you how many companies that I know that are, you know, big, like top 20, you know, corporations on the Fortune list that don't have solid onboarding plans in place for their employees. So they're definitely, it's being looked at much more closely by employees that are, you know, considering multiple offers. They're going beyond just, you know, looking at Glassdoor. They're going on, you know, beyond looking on LinkedIn to find out, you know, what is the background on these companies. You know, what do they really have in place to support me as you know, a new team member? What are they doing to really develop their personnel? Are they funding development? What does that look like? What kind of budgets are there for personal development? What kind of knowledge capture programs do companies have? And, you know, many are just now seeing a value in that and trying to get them up off the ground. So it's I feel like, you know, there's a really huge global impact, you know, on top of everything that's we're already experiencing with the pandemic and how this has impacted business, with a almost a panic where learning and development is involved. And like my own personal experience has been seeing these learning and development teams are being built out now. Like right now, I'm on a risk and regulatory training team with Charles Schwab. Last year at this time, there were 4 people on the team, and now there's over 30. You know, so they're definitely seeing, you know, a value being forced into it because of the digital transformation, I think, is a big part of it.
And Aaron, so what starts triggering me on the onboarding process? So out of research, we see that 75% of the employees have no clue what's being expected from them. somewhere in the career into the enterprise. Well, I think we have a millennial shift. We have a, let's call, generation shift where purpose, belonging is critical to them. How do you believe that you will be able to develop, attract, and retain the right talent by improving the onboarding program in a way that is integral part of their growth of their career?
Right. Well, an onboarding program so foundational. Just to be able to, function and, like you're saying, understand what their expectations are for their role and responsibilities. And when that is not formal, when there's not a formal program in place, it's very detrimental to that new talent. And then they're getting pinged left and right by other companies trying to steal them away. So, companies right now, if they're very serious about, retention of their even brand new employees, people are doing things that 5 years ago they wouldn't think about at all. They may only be with a company for 30, 60 days and not feeling it, not feeling like they're being supported with those onboarding programs. And so they are actually talking to other recruiters and then, going ahead and moving on. So how do we stop that? And the stopgap really needs to be going back to fully funding budgets for learning and development, putting those programs in place, solid onboarding programs with a pathway for development and growth for 30, 60, and 90-day milestones, working very closely with those new employees to ensure that they're not feeling lost and that they are feeling very supported and that they are valued. And the only way that we can really do that is by spending the money on those elements and then putting the personnel in place to support those new employees.
Yeah. I want to take that point, Erin. I want to bridge it into Renee. We talk about making our resources effective, developing them, onboarding them, making sure that they are connected to the brand value, to the brand proposition, the employee value proposition of a company. So what I'm looking into it, bring it into our field of expertise, more your field of expertise, Renee, where you're driving digital transformation, implementing DevOps and Agile, is where you try to maximize the value of the technology that's being acquired into a company and transform an organization digitally. However, that is also impacting that you need to run a large change program, looking into your talent, your strategic workforce planning on the skills and resources required to be successfully adopt that technology. So why do you think that we're still cutting budget on people development while the real success of our transformation is the people side of it, right? Where they are able to adopt that new way of working, that new mindset, that new culture, that new way, collaboration, but also leverage technologies like cloud or pipelines. What's your take on that?
Yeah, let's say the honest and straightforward answer is that we simply are immature in that space. And I think in some cases, we still think that it's only about the hard things and the traditional style of running a company. And let's say in this new age, and let's say the digital transformation, we all know that let's say it's a disruption, but you also built a totally new ecosystem. So let's say, especially for the employees which are already quite some while with you, it's quite a massive change, and that change that does not come overnight. So you really need to think about, let's say, how to pay attention to that. And what I learned over the last couple of years is that it is good to have ambitions in, let's say, what we have to achieve, and even if that is a high and stretched ambition, you can motivate the people, but only if you also do something else. If you really pay attention to that you invest in upskilling, that you take the time for the ones who have a little bit trouble to keep up with the pace, and that you organize for that, and that there is, let's say, not only a stretch on them, but that they have the access to the resources they need. And let's say in doing so, and that is exactly coming back to what Aaron just mentioned, yeah, you can kill two birds with one stone. If you build that capability on really put interest in your people, create the capabilities to upskill, to be, let's say, flexible in where you can work, create a purpose and a sense of belonging. If you treat your people well, they will be your best ambassador. So let's say you win that. Let's say you win the benefits in another area. They will spread the word that they are treated well, and let's say that advertisement, I think that is what people can look up in LinkedIn, and that is what they talk about. And if you do that differently than your competitors, and recently I had the chance to, maybe it's not a brilliant example, but I did the transformation in my department in Allianz Technology, and after 1.5 years, people start to talk about us. So, oh, in that area, things are going on. They do things somehow different. And let's say we were kind of the scapegoat of the company, and suddenly I got spontaneous requests in, is there a vacancy with you? And
they want to join
now, let's say, people start to rotate, and that is because of the fact that you put real interest in that part of the transformation. And I will not say that it is brilliant, but what I learned, people care about the culture. They also care about the fair pay, but let's say an inspiring environment, having the access to the resources is of equal importance for them. And the line of thinking that I'll pay them more, they will stay, that is not true. If you treat them well, they will stay.
And René, what I like about your story, you have a dominant preference. That means developing your existing workforce. But I'm looking to the industry that we do see two dominant approaches. Hire new talent and bring in new talent, the new skills, new technologies, bringing contractors, bringing agencies who bring in the new technology. But you're focusing on developing your talent with the domain knowledge in your organization. Can you share why you choose that approach strategically?
Basically, because, let's say, and that's also the title of this event, there is a squeeze in the market. So it is not that easy to find 100 new people. So why not work with the 100 people you have, and bring them to great records and great heights. And in doing so, and that is also, let's say, in the long run, what will happen. People will move on, but they will also move on with a story. What happened there was nice. I will move on now. So that advertisement, at least in a corporate like Allianz, let's say, attracts talent for your department. And I learned that, let's say, that is also a message which will reach people outside the company. And as soon as you start to recruit from externals, and you put these people also, let's say, in the process, and you have peer-to-peer, let's say, recruitment interviews, they can see it, they can feel it, and yeah, that is, let's say, building up the, let's say, your brand and your reputation, and also put it into action. And that also means that you need to be a little bit vocal in the networks, and that you ask your people to do that. And yeah, let's say I'm not so vocal in the let's say in that area. I hope that my people are vocal in that area and spread the word.
Yeah, so that's interesting. I think, René, just to give some feedback, I think you're very vocal. The only thing is that you're not on the podium yourself, but your people are, and therefore you're even visible. And I think that's what demonstrates that your strategic approach is successful. Moving it then back to Aaron. But the approach that's being proposed by René is about developing your own people. And looking into the leader program that we have been developed at DASA, we talk about what is your strategy? Does your strategy translate into operating model? Does your operating model describe the future technology being used to transform your business faster, cheaper, happier, more sustainable? And then we start planning. If we have a great organization, not many, then they start depicting the skills and how to acquire the skills. But I'm also aware that 80% of the transformations fail due to many reasons. But I also heard that a lot of people don't want to change. Who wants change? Everyone raises the hand, and then who wants to change? Everyone runs away. That's that gimmick or that picture that we share. I would like to know your story of the trenches about the good and the bad, people developing, people just clicking the trainings, not fulfilling. So how do you develop a good program that helps your organization to move along on its strategy and remains relevant in the industry, while also looking into how do you deal potentially with those who are not capable of taking that next step in their career of developing new or acquiring new skills?
Okay, yeah, thank you. I think that, what René brought up some really great points, and, it all really falls back to how are we paying for this? How are we paying to grow and develop our existing personnel? And so that goes back to where's our budget for learning and development? And that has been a real barrier to developing and working on succession planning within an organization, because we've all been in situations where when they bring in an external to lead a team that's all existing employees, that is difficult. And the question is always like, why haven't they developed internals and promoted from within? It makes sense financially, for retention purposes, but in order for them to do that, they really need to sink some money into the learning and development of the internals that they have. So it's this vicious circle of in order to grow our personnel, we have to spend money on learning and development. We have to have plans in place. We have to be able to, provide, whether it's third-party vendors or internal development and delivery of upskilling, training and, experiences where we can provide growth opportunities to employees. That all costs money. And when learning and development is on the low end of the totem pole and they are not getting the funding that they need to support, it's how can they possibly provide these opportunities? And so I feel like this pandemic has definitely opened the eyes of the C-suite to see more of a value in learning and development as a group, and which is why there are so many teams globally that are being built out, because they're seeing this as a need. How can we approach this challenge? Well, we need the personnel in the learning and development sphere. We need to fund that, and then we need to fund the training, whether it's being purchased from a third-party vendor or being developed in-house. It all falls back to budget. So I feel like in order for any company, regardless of size, if they are going to address development and change and help their bottom line by retention of employees, they are going to have to invest not only in the employees training, but in the team that actually supports and delivers this training.
An interesting take that I would like to bring into the managers that I engage with, so my current role is like, but Aaron, I have a lot of budget reserved for training and budget. and no one is asking for training. The budget is never being used the year, so I'm already planning to repurpose it in the middle of the year. So why is no one doing a training?
That's a really good question, and I think that that is a top-down issue. You know, I can't tell you how many times, you know, people will come to me and say, I need training on a particular tool, or even a manager will come and say, my team really needs to have training on this, you know, we got a new software tool that we need to be able to use, or, you know, something to help us with the design of the aircraft wings, the structures, you know, like when I was at Lockheed. And you know, I would make the world you know, stop, and I would, you know, get the funding and put that training in place, and then no one would come to the training because they were told by their managers that not everyone could go. So there needs to be support, and it needs to come from above. There needs to be a culture of support for learning, and when people need to take advantage of training opportunities, they need to feel like they are being allowed, that they have that permission and the support from their managers to actually set that time aside to make it a priority. And if they're not getting that message from above, then the push of day-to-day business is right there staring at them on their desk, and that is what they're going to address. So they really, it's kind of goes to even the piece about having a safe place with work, as far as you know, taking your time for your self-care, right?
Yeah.
Because even if they tell you you have unlimited days off, you know, unlimited vacation, you know, there's a huge difference between here's this benefit we have, and then how many people are actually, you know, utilizing it. And employees don't utilize that unless they're getting positive support from above, right? And it's the same with training.
Yeah, so I want to challenge. I'm curious about this one. Recently, I had a discussion with a good friend of mine who is mastering OBM, Organizational Behavior Management, and he says there is no change if there are no consequences, and positively or negatively, right? So I'm just remaining away from positive reinforcement, negative reinforcement. Our change models that we are training and use, like Kotter and Atkar, is always the necessity to change. And so what I'm thinking is we have budget in place, we build the HR infrastructure, the HR development infrastructure in place, application portals, easy to access, micro learnings, videos, coaching peers. We have all the stuff in place, but no one is doing it. Do you know good practices, or even maybe better, bad practices that really helps to fuel that initial drive for learning? Because I believe there needs something like a spark, like a drive, like a need that needs to be in place to drive this change.
Absolutely. I think that best practices in order to get your employees to actually participate in training that's available is to make sure that they understand that it's a priority. And when you are building those relationships, those trusted relationships with your own employees, with your team, they need to understand, you know, what your, you know, what your personal belief is about any kind of professional development that is being given to them. You can't tell them, okay, hey, hop on LinkedIn Learning, and you know, you have an account and you can use this whenever you want to, if they are if they don't have the time in their actual schedule to do it, and if they don't have the support from their manager, from their leader, to actually make time to take part in that training. And that, I think, is paramount. If that support's not coming from above, to feel at ease with taking time to attend a webinar, register for some kind of training, take a class online, you know, even the smallest micro learning takes time.
Yeah.
And you have to schedule it, just like you have to schedule time off for self-care. You have to schedule and make priority any kind of training, and you need to schedule it.
Sebastian, I've got Mark de Duke who would like to say something, so I'm just going to let him contribute.
Sure.
Mark, over to you.
Thank you so much. Yeah, thank you so much for unmuting me. Mark de Deugd, Agile Lead from Portbase, the Netherlands. I've got two questions, but the second one really digs in this topic. For example, we've got everything in place, almost everything in place. We got the budgets, we got, they are allowed to take their time, 20% rules, everybody is talking performance cycles, we've got everything. But even then, we are using 40%, 50% of the budget. Are there any examples or behavioral traits that we can use, or that we as a company can provide to? It's not even lure, but to inspire them to use the time, to use the budget. Is there more that we can do for them, and perhaps on strategic level as well?
Right.
Thanks, Mark.
Yeah, that's a
Before we start,
really good question.
Before we start, so Mark, welcome. Great to hear that you are in this this webinar. Unfortunately, I cannot see who is joining, so great to hear from you again. Mark was one of my participants of one of the DASA DevOps leaders, and really, I think one of the eager ones. While Mark, you're advancing the question, sir, so there is some structure in this webinar where we want to build upon to it, where we, of course, we are now touching on the behavioral traits into it. Before we continue on your question, and I will have written it down, so I try to come back on it during the webinar, but I want to, because I think Aaron brought in top support, making time available, allocating the budget, but I also want to hear from René, who has led this from, let's call it the trenches, what he did on driving, let's call it talent development and learning from the field.
Yeah, I was carefully listening to Erin, and also the question for Mark is, why don't people ask for training? And yeah, I don't have the ultimate answer for that, because I also experienced that let's say the most of the time they don't ask that in a natural way. So you should offer it, and that is maybe a very silly and a simple approach, but offer it. Let's say in the past couple of years, I always worked in let's say in transformation mode. That you really start to do a restructuring, implement DevOps or Agile, so something big. And I never asked, hey guys, would you like training? Organized it. You know what kind of a base level is needed, and just offer it, and offer it in a mode that in the beginning it is training / coaching on the job. So discover it with each other, and in doing so you also trigger the need for training, because let's say you do first the basics and the fundamentals, and then people start to understand, it would be helpful if there is a little bit more. And if you make it transparent that it is available each and every time, and also celebrate that if people come back from a training with a certificate, and yeah, let's say take that 1 minute time to say well done, and let's say put them a little bit in the spotlight in your town halls, and say, okay, we have 5 new people who have gained their new badge or whatsoever. It's no effort. It takes you literally 2 minutes of your time, and you trigger, let's say, the kind of the culture and the vibe that okay, there is a training. It is okay if I attend it, and also we had always a mix of trainings after let's say business hours or during business hours, and let's say most of the time the people pick the trainings after business hours, and I thought they will pick the trainings during business hours. But let's say if you create, let's say, the vibe that that it is okay. So yeah, let's say my approach is make them ready for asking it, and free up their time. We also had a ground rule, especially in the early stages of a transformation, that okay, 20% of your time, let's say, should be available for training, and it is also okay to attend a seminar. It's not always studying in the book or whatsoever. There are many ways, but foster it and promote it, and also acknowledge the ones who are the front runners there. And same as I said, let's say in the beginning, let your own people be the ambassadors for the good practices. Lower the bar.
Yeah.
Not everybody is so brave to knock on your door and say, sit and listen, I want an MBA, and you have to pay for it. But if you bring them to in a state that they ask you, and you are really open for that to discuss even the more expensive stuff, yeah, I'll say people usually, let's say, spend also the company money wisely. And you just need to help them a little bit that that there is money, because it's in your budget, that it can be spent for them. It's for that. So that has always been my my approach in the last couple of years. If you wait till they ask it, then it's anyhow too late. So be proactive in that.
Thank you for
we have
sharing your
another
experience.
question.
Helpful.
But before we continue, Katrina, I want to bring another perspective on the insight and René brings, and then we will hand over to the next question. So don't underestimate the social construct. And what I mean with it is, Aaron brought forward the example is that when people have unlimited free days, they don't consume their free days, or they don't take time off. And that's interesting, right? Because no one brags about what they have done, and how many days they took off, and how healthy they were, and that they took care of themselves. What they do brag about in the social construct of a company is, I'm so busy. I'm so busy, and sometimes like a competition, I'm so busy. And that means like, okay, if I'm so busy, can I then say, I've done the last couple of years 6 trainings, and I really are anticipating on it. I'm going to conferences, I'm going to webinars, I'm consuming the latest knowledge about how I can help this company. No, there is no social construct that incentivizes that behavior, and that's where you aimed on, Mark. What I really like about it is there a true incentive, a positive reinforcement of the behavior, where you don't complain for a week, don't brag about healthy stuff, while the social structure often is underpinning the whole strategy, because being busy is the standard. If you're just having overview, why do companies have technical debt that's preventing them to be business agility? Why are they not investing money in, let's call it, reducing technical debt, one of our constructs that we talk about in DevOps? How to break that core conflict between that new business demand and fixing the stuff that you really need to keep the lights on. Because in the social construct, the behavior is that we are complimented about delivering that new fancy feature, about delivering what the customer has asked us, because that's our brand value. That's where we get our incentives on. That's where we internally being rewarded on. The interesting part is that, and it's really about the brain itself, where the amygdala is just screaming about getting rewards and recognition, and the whole hormones in your brains about endorphins and serotonin is being fired, is by continuously getting confirmation on the behavior that you demonstrate. So if you're saying we're putting budget away, we are putting the infrastructure in place, but you don't see anyone training, are you really have addressed the right behaviors, the diminishers of the behaviors, and the patterns are put in place that just prevents you on improving what you need to manage? What's your take on that, Mark, if I can invite you to respond?
We haven't. While you're saying this, and I'm thinking about, no, we haven't. And that was also my first question in the chat. How do you create awareness on all levels, leadership, HR, C-level? And what we still didn't do is even the director. It's okay. Of course, it's okay. They say it's okay to learn, but they don't show it, and their behavior shows otherwise. So that's a social construct that we are in, that we probably need to change if we like to initiate the others to really fulfill their initiatives and their learning paths and learning development. So no,
No,
not yet, not yet.
And therefore, Mark, it is interesting to show that you have the infrastructure in place. You're putting everything in place, rewards and recognition, but the social construct is evenly important to focus upon.
Yeah.
And this is a difficult example about learning, because it's a very complex program. But if we have, for example, people are being burned out, and we tell them not to work after 5, but we have then a whole group of managers and leaders sending emails at 1 o'clock. Do you know what's going to happen?
They will work until 1 o'clock. Yeah,
exactly, because that's the construct that we build, the culture that we build, that we instill. So you also need to, as leader, do you demonstrate the right behavior? Do you go on page with your new badges, being stuck to your trousers, where you show, listen, I've done this, this, and this? You also need to demonstrate the right behavior. You cannot expect other behavior from your people if you don't demonstrate yourself. That's my mantra about it.
Yeah. Thanks for opening it up.
Can we hear from Rajat?
Yeah.
Okay. Rajat, I've just unmuted you. You need to unmute yourself, I think. Rajat, there you go.
This is Rajat. My name is Rajat. I head solution design for Broadcom's Enterprise Operations Division. I have a comment and a question, if that's appropriate. The comment really is that I think there's something very important. Sebastian mentioned about the anecdote you shared about your friend who said that change has to come with consequences, positive or negative. And you know, we all have been talking about some of the more skill-oriented, making it a priority type of making it a priority as a to be successful in a company as a consequence. I think another important, and this is an open question, what we're often noticing now is that actually viewing learning as a mechanism or as a driver to chart your career development path within a company or beyond it in your aspirations is also, it can be an important consequence. And have you all noticed that or observed that, especially when it comes to this incentive equation, which has less to do with, of course, pay, but more to do with purpose and growth, both in terms of your roles, responsibilities, and your charter. And then secondly, so that's one question that have what type of leadership and C-level intent have you all seen in the marketplace to have that type of recognition and really having a manager or hiring people who hire, especially that type of program in place where you're actually having a very deliberate conversation with your teams and your people who report into your work for you in any capacity, that, you know, can we chart a career development path for you? So that's number one. And number two is that we all recognize that there is a human capital squeeze around transformation, DevOps, and Agile. But I think, you know, myself working for a tech company, we have done some great service or disservice, as you may want to call it, as to fragmenting concepts into commodities and products. This is DevOps, this is Agile, this is that, this is X, Y, and Z. And I think that has that led to us boxing people in buzzwords versus concepts, which then allows them to transfer skills to different roles. and has sort of this synergistic effect of people trying new things, spurring innovation. At least we often see in our folks that, oh, you come from an agile background, maybe you don't understand DevOps as much, or vice versa, or DevOps is just about automation, or agile is more about culture and business. So anyways, I just wanted to sense that what you all have experienced in terms of appetite for this a little bit of out of the box or contrarian type of thinking to address this human capital squeeze we're discussing.
Thanks. So stay with us, because you have, I think, 3 or 4 questions with a few dimensions. So I hope that we are able to tick them off. But let me start with one. So I think framing people into like an archetype, agilist, developer, DevOps, potentially impact that they're being boxed and limit their, let's call it, internal mobility. What I think is critical, what we have identified, and also what Renee brought forward into our conversation, that domain knowledge is critical. So absolutely. If you hire a data scientist and you put him somewhere in a team without domain knowledge, or without a group of individuals who can collaboratively build that, let's call it, applied data science, artificial intelligence, or build that software for banking, finance, for semiconductors, for services business, it doesn't make sense. So on itself, boxing people on in roles, responsibilities, without looking into the, let's call it, the domain knowledge, the purpose of the work, I don't think it helps. It also doesn't incentivize, right? Because that is just, then you are knowledge hoarding about your core competence, software development, yet another development language. But if you put that into the consequences that you can apply it and you can make an impact, where you can really see, hey, listen, this is something for good. And I want to share an example that I see in our ecosystem around software development and AI. There are some organizations that focus on AI for health, AI for good, software for good, where they jointly bring universities, talent scouts, companies together on developing software for impact that tremendously drive energy, learning on the job, because they are really energized to it. So boxing is, in my opinion, always a big no from my perspective. Maybe Renee, your take on it?
Yeah, find it really difficult question, to be honest. And for me, the timing, what people need to do to fulfill their task is really important. And let's say the last months and last year, I never met an engineer who said, "I'm screwed. You pushed me to the limit, and I cannot handle it." It's more the other way around, that they come up with, "I found something new." And then some kind, let's say, seek for approval. Is it okay if we move into a certain direction? And that is, let's say, in these situations, then I found myself, okay, did I miss something? And then it's more opening up and say, okay, explain, and how could you use that? And then, let's say, you consult more and support in how to bring it also into the company in a safe and a compliant way. But let's say my experience is that the pressure is more the other way around. That people come up with new tools or new practices, and also come already with kind of a level of knowledge which they gained themselves, and say, okay, this is really cool technology which we can use in our for our purpose. And then it's more the other way around, that you have to not make a decision, but more that you have to accommodate, let's say, also going forward, that you take that in your portfolio of training and And let's say that is also part of the culture, and it's not a surprise that I started my my explanation with create the right culture, that people love to work for you and that you really show that you take care. So that is more where I come from, but I'm also not from, let's say the HR or training business. It's more I'm on the other side of the equation. Yeah, when do we need it, and let's say how do you steer in a day-to-day basis, and how do you develop a culture where it comes spontaneously and that you have it available. And yeah, that is for me, let's say the fun. Have it available when you need it, and scale it up if people bring it in a spontaneous way, and ensure that they don't hit, let's say, all the walls in the company because a compliance officer or a risk officer is pushing them down. So no, then I will walk next to you to get rid of all these obstacles and etc. etc. So that is a little bit the companionship and do it together. Yeah, and create abundance, that it is possible.
So René, so I also want to bridge it to Aaron and bring it back into the consequences, right? And I mean, I'm not talking about negative consequences here, because I think what history shows that when change is inflicted on people, COVID, technology opportunities, people change for the better, right? That's human nature. Are there any practices, Aaron, in the learning and development approach where you see that you can support it with potential, and I call the terminology consequences, maybe there's a better word for it, but the potential consequences, how you help them incentivize, create a necessity, create a desire to change?
You're asking me?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Yes, I think that, what's been shared about, creating a culture that is supportive of change, a culture of care, of genuine care, for your employees is really paramount to invoking that type of appetite for change. My own personal experiences has been that people really do want to learn. They really do want the training. They want to know that new tool. They want to upskill and take part in training. But when they don't feel like they have that support, if they don't feel that they have the support for what they are inspired to do, then they are not able to actually take part in it. I kind of feel that, removing those boundaries, and what I've seen take place in cultures is that when you have a manager who genuinely wants you to be successful and is walking along with you and coaching you so that you can grow, whether it's with leadership or, some other role that you're interested in, then, then that's a real positive. People do want to change. They want ease and flow. They want, there to be collaboration, using learning in a way where they can, work easier and, be able to, function at high capacity, but with less moving parts, if that makes sense. And in order to get to that point, they need to have that supportive culture.
Yeah. So Ranjit, did we had a good try on answering your question?
Yes, I think what I could say with good amount of certainty. Thank you for a healthy conversation. I think this will continue to remain as one of those very interesting conversations or dialogue moving forward, where on one side, I do agree with Sebastian, your comment around we have to have some sort of a domain orientation to be able to cater and still be productive under the time constraints that Renee talked about. But we also need to acknowledge that there is a dramatic convergence happening in technology space, which is an outcome of incredible complexity and fragmentation around tooling that the market has actually, tech business has actually, dare I say, enabled in a lot of ways. So understanding the domain versus understanding the technologies, the tools and the concepts that serve the domain, in my opinion, hopefully from a human capital standpoint, we get to a place where we start focusing more on the domain, the concepts and the technology versus the tools and the widgets and the features, because yeah, it is arithmetic and we just don't have the human capital across the world if we go by that.
Thank you. I really would like to amen on that one. That's exactly, and in my role as head of manufacturing, I often have a discovery question that starts with, how many people do you have on your payroll who are past the retirement date, retirement age? How much knowledge is being covered into that specific individual that you need to deal with the complexity in your environment? And shockingly, that's often more than you think. Maybe not in the whole, let's call it, where everything is already being digitized, but I'm talking about manufacturers, I'm talking about enterprises who deal with a lot of legacy in the past. And exactly, my pitch is that there will not be one system, there will be not one application, there will be not one database. The complexity will evolve, and even for sake of business risk and being able to operate in more regions globally, often you have, that's called domain solutions that you need to implement to be able to operate in that specific environment. And then building one size fits all is something that I think is not anymore possible. Therefore, practices like enterprise architecture are those critical roles who help you to develop that integrations, that business agility, while still focusing on managing, of course, the non-functional requirements like the costs, the security, and all other elements that are critically important.
And my apologies, but just one, I would also like to just give a last shout out to Aaron for recognizing the knowledge of learning and development. I just really hope that the conversation you all are having and the commentary, Sebastian, you just made actually ripples or cascades upwards to really having people who are hiring start thinking outside of the box, in really peeling the onion and looking at transferable skills, crafting career development paths, how you leverage human capital where 1 + 1 can be equal to 5 versus the other way around. So anyways, I'll end it with that. Thank you so much. Enjoying this conversation. Thank you.
Thanks, Sanjit, and thanks for your feedback. I'll appreciate a shout out for Aaron. And I think I want to emphasize also that, right? So that those skills will move beyond that. It's also, if you look to the definition of 21st century skills, it's not about technology, it's about collaboration, the ability to learn, the ability to change your own narratives, look into your own needs and be able to reframe those messages. As such, you create an inclusive environment where you are open to collaborate and see how do you bring the best talent forward. In my early days as manager, I've seen, especially focusing on knowledge hoarding, where people derive their mandate, derive their, let's call it, their power about the knowledge they own and they don't share. And I think by institutionalizing, and it's a wrong English word, but I'm trying to rephrase it right, knowledge management, learning and development, de-risking company profiles about making sure that knowledge is being captured, being maintained, being life cycled, I think is a critical element going forward. And therefore, you cannot underestimate the vision that Aaron brought in today around learning and development. How critical is that? So cutting costs on building that environment of learning and building the infrastructure required to facilitate the learning. Well, René points out that the strategic workforce planning, looking into your operating model, which knowledge do you require, and then work in abundance with your people on ensuring that they have the right environment to acquire that knowledge is critical. The question is, how do you do it? How do you overcome all barriers that prevent you to implement the learning and development? It's called environment. How do you build that proper structure? Yeah, we don't have all those answers yet because every situation in every company is quite unique. Before we start focusing on closing out the conversation, I want to make one round around Erin and René and then one round for additional questions. So maybe from your perspective, Erin, if I want to hand over to you, what is your giveaways to us, our takeaways that we need to bring home and start working upon?
Well, I think that it's really important, to take a step back and, look at what we're doing in the learning and development space. How are we developing that culture of learning and supporting employees so that they know and feel that, that there is value, and that, to what René was saying, adding in that element of the culture, where they're actually being celebrated, for taking the time to train. That's so important, and that really folds into having a culture of care. And I really feel that, moving forward, in order for us to, see retention working, in the corporate space, and, seeing, people feeling valued, that is really the foundation of that pyramid. I also know that with the ISO 30414 for human capital management, that there's a real value with training and knowledge capture and the succession planning, and it's so important that it's incorporated in that ISO, and which was adopted by the SEC here in the US. And it's having a slow roll, but it's, those are elements that are, that investors are looking at. And not only investors, but employees, potential employees, are looking to see what is the investment in the actual training, and what does that mean, and how does that correlate, and how do companies compare to one another. So it's definitely being looked at from outside. And so we definitely need to be spending more time looking at it from within.
Thanks, Erin. And one question, ISO
30414, human capital management.
Yeah, it's around the ISO standards. I found it there. Thanks for sharing, Erin.
Yes.
A very good resource again.
You're welcome.
René.
Yeah, the takeaway, make it mainstream and create abundance. And let's say in these times from digital transformation, that we trigger or bring a lot of change to our companies. So, and let's say in triggering all that change, you should also create abundance on, or at least abundance of access to the resources. So make it mainstream that the people have access to training and education. And you triggered me with one of your analysis points. In, let's say, in digital transformation, we really put a lot of effort in end-to-end ownership of teams owning a certain business solution. So if you, let's say, foster that team ownership, you also foster in a quite natural way that people share the knowledge between each other. So the trap that a colleague close to his retirement is the only one having knowledge from something, that is also a way to minimize that. So make it almost an habit that, and you can make a lot of, let's say, good formats around that, that people share their knowledge and to upskill their colleagues, to reasonable levels. And then let's say training and education certainly has a totally different, let's say, format, because then it's upskilling each other, and you do that while working with each other. So that is, and as soon as you bring that to the table, if you start to talk about that, and you raise your expectation, hey guys, talk to each other, teach each other, don't be the one hero, because then we will exhaust you, because then everybody will ask you to do this and this and this and this and this, and that is anyhow not a healthy life. So protect yourself in sharing your knowledge, and then it's not that you send them to a training or an education. They suddenly start workshops with each other to share the knowledge. That and that is what I would say. Try to find these kind of ways to skill and keep the skill in your teams and your department.
Thanks, René. So what I take away a little bit from you is a mantra. If you want to grow, you need to let things go. Otherwise, you cannot deal with the whole complexity of the environment you need to deal with. So if you want to grow, you need to let things go and learn new stuff. Thanks, René, and a shout out to you. Moving back into the audience, so are there any questions, any last final questions that people want to raise? Feel free to raise your hand, unmute yourself before we slowly but steadily start to wrap up. Coco, maybe Katrina, any raised hands, any questions?
Any questions from the audience, the last minute questions? Please raise your hand and I will unmute you. No, we're not getting any questions as yet.
Now, then I will slowly but steadily try to close this session. So, Aaron, René, thank you very much for joining. Thank you so much for participating in our community. And I think that's one of the last invites I would like to do. So this call and this problem solving that we're trying to do here and trying to view different perspectives on social construct, learning and development, learning in abundance, I think that's being shared by different perspectives. We also demonstrate that we don't have all the answers, but that we are looking into a group where we try to work together to solve the problem and see how we can address this strategically. My invite to you is please share it. Invite colleagues, peers, other leaders in your network that could help us on solving this problem. As such, we drive the impact into, let's call it, the economy. Join us over the DASA communities, and I know for sure that we do a follow-up. Please post also on LinkedIn that we can build this community to grow and that everyone can benefit equally from it. With having said that, again, thank you, Aaron, René, Coco, Katrina, and Bruno for organizing this, and looking forward to you all.
Okay, you're welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Thank you very much for joining us, all of you, and Sebastian for hosting, and on a very important, relevant topic. And, you know, there were some very good points, and, you know, it is about learning from each other and you know, not just, you know, learning from the teacher. So, yeah, I think some very valid comments. So thank you, Erin and René and Sebastian. And as Sebastian mentioned, please do join us in this forum. We want to grow this forum with, you know, thought leaders like today. And we're actually going to be continuing the theme on talent for the next topic in February, which we hope Sebastian might be part of again. Still to be confirmed. But basically, we're going to be talking in February at the end of these events will happen at the end of the month, usually on a Thursday. We're going to make it a little bit earlier next time, 5 o'clock. The next topic will be creating a sustainable talent ecosystem and how to do that. And we will have 3 more speakers joining that. And then in March, we've got another one focused on maximizing cloud investments. And then in April, improving the time to market of digital products and service on Thursday, the 28th of April. So please do join us. Please do spread the word and, you know, invite your sort of, you know, people that you know who are sort of leaders in IT. We would love to hear from you. There is going to be a poll as we close this session. And please give your feedback of today's session and also any comments that you might have in terms of contributing to this forum and also participating, as I mentioned earlier, as a speaker. We would love to hear from you. If you have any questions also regarding the DASA membership, Helen, who spoke to us about DASA earlier, who is the Director of Membership at DASA, her email is helen.parker@devopsagileskills.org. So thank you very much, everybody, for joining us today. And René, Sebastian, Erin, great to have you and look forward to hearing more from you in the future.